So today I'm going to start installing a new solar power system. Now this is going to be a budget build. It's going to be a cost-effective way to be able to add solar and battery backup to your property or to your house. Now this is not sponsored. I paid for all of this with my own money. I picked out these products myself to install. So this is considered an off-grid system. It doesn't try to interact with the grid or sell back power, so you don't have to deal with the power company. And you can pretty much install it anywhere as long as you follow your local electrical codes. So I'm going to install the new system here in the basement of my house. I believe I've got room over here to the side of this breaker panel. So the battery will go here at the bottom and the inverter will be on top of it. And it's going to power this breaker panel. That is my critical loads panel. It has like my fridge, my freezer, hot water heater. It has all the lights in the house. It's got my propane furnace, my fireplace. All of the critical stuff is in this panel. But in all reality, this is probably only a quarter of my total power usage. Most of these are small loads. And the other 75% of my power comes out of this panel. And we're going to leave it powered by the existing solar power that we have. And it has, this has my air conditioner, my oven, my washer and dryer. All of the big stuff is in here. So when the power goes out, I'll still probably have everything in this panel for at least a half a day. But this panel over here, considering it's only a quarter of the power usage, I'm hoping that it lasts almost 2 days. So this here is the battery that I'm going to be installing in the basement. This is the EG4 Indoor Power Pro battery. And this thing weighs like 282 pounds. This thing is a beast. Now it's not really something that one person should try to move around, but I think with the proper equipment, you can do it by yourself. At least I'm going to try. So this battery is warranted for 10 years or 8,000 cycles at 80% depth of discharge. So that's a long time, and it's probably designed to actually last closer to 15 years. It's warranted for 10. So this is gonna work for me for a long time. So now the trick is I need to get this down in the basement of my house and get it installed. We'll get a strap around this, it ain't going nowhere. Well, we'll say if you don't have any heavy equipment, this is probably the way to go, doing it like this. We're raising chickens and turkeys back here. I don't have enough room to get the tractor around, so I'm doing it by hand. All right, we got our battery down here in the basement. Now I just need to go ahead and get it set in place. There is a mounting bracket attached to the back of this. I'm going to go ahead and get it put on the wall and then get the battery set in place. And that bracket's just going to keep the battery from accidentally getting shifted or knocked over. So this is the part where it really helps to have two people. This is almost impossible to do by yourself. We've got to lift this up like 1.5 inches and set it down on that bracket. I don't suggest you try to do this by yourself. Somehow I managed to get this in place after several attempts, but you've got to be able to push in at the bottom and push in at the top while you lift it. And then everything needs to be plumb for it to kind of fall into place in the bracket. And very difficult with this 280-pound battery to do by yourself. All right, go ahead and put our conduit box on here. It just mounts to some existing screws that were in the top of the battery. So I just got to put the screws back in and she's good. All right, the next thing to do is to install the inverter on top of the enclosure. And the inverter is what actually is going to turn that battery power into AC power to power the breaker panel in our house. So this is the inverter I bought. It is the 6000 XP by EG4. So this is a 240 volt split phase inverter, same as the power that comes in from the power company here in the United States. So this is probably one of the most popular off-grid inverters that's out there for sale right now. And I chose this, of course, because of it's got proven reliability and the ease of installation, and it's stackable. You can add on to this. So if you put one in at 6,000 watts, if you want to add another, you can. They will sync up. You'll have 12,000 watts. Or you can add another for 18,000 watts, and you can build this all the way up, I think, to like 16 of these. So let's go ahead. We'll take this down to the basement. I'll get this installed right on top of the conduit box. We'll get it wired up to the breaker panel and the battery. And then I'm going to unhook. I've got 3 solar arrays on this roof. I'm going to unhook one of them and get it wired over to this system so it does have solar, so it can start charging the batteries and running everything that way, and we can test it out. Later on down the road, I've got more panels to add, and we'll have this system maxed out. But today, we're just going to use the panels we have. So I was just reading the manual, and I realized that I screwed up. So the inverter says that it's not supposed to be mounted to any combustible material, or, well, my wall's wood. In fact, my entire house is wood. There's not an ounce of drywall in this entire house. And that's kind of the way I like it. That's the reason I did it that way. But now I've got to have something different here. I know a lot of people will use like a tile backer board. It's like a concrete board that they'll put on the wall to mount the inverter on and give it that like a concrete layer in between, basically. But now, if I do that, my battery and my conduit box are all the wrong distance from the wall. Everything has to be spaced out the same. So now if I'm gonna go back and put something on the wall here, I've got to take my battery back off the wall. I've got to readjust it out, space it out, so that all of these conduit holes on the top of the box, everything matches up the way it's supposed to. So, sounds like I'm gonna have to stop for today, run to a home improvement store, and get some tile backer board. So I went out and bought 2 sheets of 1/4-inch thick fiber cement board. I just think that this product will probably look the best once it's finished. So I need to cut these sheets down to the correct size. And I've got a diamond masonry blade in my circular saw. I'm going to use a straight edge so that I have nice straight cuts. All right, I've got the fiber cement board mounted all the way up the wall. After I got it screwed on there, I went ahead and just put another coat of paint on there just to blend in all the screws. I think it looks nice. I went ahead, I've got the battery remounted, and now it's time to put the inverter on the wall. So this thing only weighs 53 pounds, so luckily I can do this by myself. So this enclosure does come with some grommets for you to be able to put through these holes, and it's just easy to just go ahead and use them since they came with it. So one of my conduit holes is just like a 32nd of an inch off, and then this one last grommet won't fit in there. I'm gonna have to get rough with it, I think. Oh, there we go, got her in. So I'm going to go ahead and get the positive and negative battery cables hooked up, and then the communication cable, and then we'll go ahead and start hooking up our AC power connections. And click, it's on there. And that one clicked in as well. So now that the conduit's complete, I'm going to go ahead and run power from the output breaker over to this breaker panel to power up our critical loads. And then for the grid connection, the backup connection, I just need to run power from our other breaker panel over here to that. And our other breaker panel is actually powered by our hybrid battery backup system, our EP Cube system. So our backup is another solar backup. So this is going to be pretty redundant when we're done. And the generator connection, I'm not going to hook that up because I've already got a generator inlet over on the workshop on the hybrid solar system, and that's where we'll hook up a generator if we need it. So I've got everything wired up now except for solar panels, but before I do that, I want to go ahead and just get this powered up. So I can power it up off of the battery, and then we can get our backup power connected over to it, and we can actually charge the battery up from the grid. And I'd like to do all those things first, and then we'll move on to solar panels. So we're going to go ahead and turn our breaker on the battery. We're going to go ahead and turn our breaker on the inverter. And the last thing to do is to hit the power switch. The battery will boot up, and then it'll power up the inverter. You can see the screen's coming on there. There, the inverter's already on. You probably can't see that screen. All right, I've got everything powered up, and I got the Wi-Fi connection set up. So I've got it on my app on my phone. I can change all the settings from here, plus I can change them on the screen if I want to. I've got it charging off of this other panel, and it's going to get the battery back up to 100%. Everything looks good. I think the only thing to do now is I just need to get some solar panels hooked up. So I've already got the conduit ran from like right here, it's right above my head. I've got it all the way over at the workshop, and I just need to get the wire pulled over here and then finish this last 4 feet of conduit, and I can get it hooked up. So over here at my workshop in the solar room, all of my solar panels that come into this junction box right here. So we're going to pull wire from this junction box all the way over to the 6000 XP in the basement. So the conduit is already ran. I put in an extra 1-inch conduit in the ground when we put in our first solar. And we're going to use that extra 1-inch conduit to pull the solar panel wiring over to the house. I've already got it finished into the junction box, and the conduit comes up right here and it goes over into the basement. So to pull this wiring, I've got to get to some of these conduit fittings. So I'm going to have to pull up some of the decking here on the porch. Oops. So looking down here, here's the fitting we're going to be pulling the wire out of from underground, and then it's going to come over here and it's going to go into the basement right there, and then it switches to metal conduit. So the wire that I bought for this project, I just bought it like a cut to length wire, so it comes rolled up just like this. It's not on a spool, so it can get tangled easy. So I'm just going to have to unroll the whole thing and get it laid out in the yard before I pull it in. I always end up buying plenty of wire. I don't want to run out. And this wire actually, I think, reaches all the way to my electrical meter. I've got plenty. So I just finished getting all of the wire unrolled, and I'm ready to pull a string into the underground conduit. That way I can use that string to tie to the wire and then pull the wire through the conduit. So I'm just going to be using like a regular trash bag that you get at the store, tied to a string, and we'll be able to pull that through the conduit just using a regular shop vac. So on our vacuum, we did put a piece of 1-inch conduit on the end to help get that inside of this conduit fitting down there. So this may work, it may not. Not enough suction to get that plastic bag in there. I think I'm going to have to cut this down, make a smaller plastic bag. All right, I've just got the bottom corner of the plastic bag. Oh, there it goes. Pulling it in. If it doesn't get caught. It's going. Oh, it stopped. It's in the vacuum on the other side. There you go. You got her now. Well, apparently I had the wires wrapped around the tripod, so I think we're good to go now.
Okay, it's out.
It's out. You got her. So I did purchase 20 more solar panels, and they're going to fill out the rest of the workshop roof, and they'll get wired to the 6000 XP. But for right now, I've taken that very top solar array and I've got it wired over to it. So that's just over, I think, 3,800 watts of solar we got wired, and that's going to at least allow us to use it in the meantime until I can get the rest of the solar panels up. So now to connect it to the critical loads panel. So first thing you got to do is you got to turn on this EPS output, or the UPS output switch over on this side, and then it will start outputting power. So in my breaker panel, I do have an interlock to give me two power sources. So the main breaker on top, that is the grid tied solar power, and then this 50 amp breaker is our 6000 XP. And this keeps them from both being on at the same time. So I got to turn off my main breaker, and then I can slide that up and I can turn on the 6000 XP. So I just turned on the PV disconnect and it's starting to bring solar in. The fans have ramped up. We've got 3,170 watts of solar coming in, and that is charging the batteries and powering the loads right now. Well, it's 6:15 in the evening now, and starting to where the sun is getting behind the trees over here. And I went ahead, I topped the battery off, so it's sitting at 100% right now, and we'll start draining it overnight. I'm gonna let it run overnight and for the next couple days, and we'll see how this does. So it's the next day now. We ran all night long on the new solar battery backup system, and I must have misjudged exactly how much our critical loads were, because it didn't quite make it. It made it till 8 a.m. this morning. We were getting solar coming in, and it just wasn't enough. It got to 20% battery, so it switched to the grid, and then it let the solar charge the battery. And then at 9:30 this morning, the battery was at 30%, it switched back. And we were in the house when it switched to the grid and switched back, and we never noticed anything. So it seemed to switch seamlessly. I'll have to do some more testing on that, but we didn't notice it switch back and forth. Everything just was smooth. So we ended up running an hour and a half on the grid, the rest of the time on the batteries. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna continue to let this run and see how it does. So my other solar power system doesn't transfer seamlessly every time. Sometimes it blips, and it's like a 1 to 3 second blip, maybe 1 to 5 second blip, depending on what the load was at the time. And this system seems to transfer very smoothly. So I'm changing the setting, and bam, it just switched to grid. I changed the battery setting. It switched to grid. It didn't blink the lights at all. I'm gonna change the setting again. Click, it just switched over to the batteries. So when this switches between battery and grid on a normal daily operation, you don't even see the lights blink. It's perfect transfer. There, I just switched it back to the grid again. It's running off grid power. And now what I'm gonna do, you're on grid and you have a power outage, it's gonna transfer over. We'll see what this does. It's a little different. You see that blink? There's a really short blink. That's a very quick transfer. Way better than my other system. So I'm very happy with the way this transfers back and forth between grid and batteries and solar, or during a power outage when it flips to batteries. It's just got that little flicker. Switch it back onto the grid. Just transferred. You didn't even see it flicker. So very happy with the way the transfer speed is on this. It's about as seamless as you could probably get. So I've been running this new solar setup for 10 days now, and it has worked flawlessly. So I probably misjudged exactly how much power this panel uses, because we do drain the battery down to 20% most nights, and then it switches to the grid. So out of the last 10 days, 5 of those days the battery got low enough that it switched over to the backup power. The other 5 days, the battery lasted all night long and continued to charge with solar the next day and continued on. We actually went a total of 3 days without switching to the grid. And out of the last week, just the last 7 days, this only switched over and was on the grid for 18.5 hours in 7 days. That's 9% of the time. And 91% of the time, it produced its own power and powered everything. So just with this setup, the way I have it right now, it's making 91% of its power. I think that's pretty good. So my new solar setup was very easy to build. I think it's definitely DIY friendly. This conduit box in the middle, I think that helps just bring everything together so that it fits together properly, makes it look nice as well, and it gives you a place to just route all of your wiring. And really, the way these all-in-one inverters are nowadays, they package everything inside of them so there's less wiring to do. So we just got our solar panel wire coming in for solar, we've got our output wiring going out, and we got our backup wiring going in. Other than that, there's just the battery connections that are inside of the wiring trough there. So I think they've simplified this. You know, the way this is all set up, they've simplified it to make it as DIY friendly as it could possibly be. And over the last 10 days running this, very happy with the way it has performed. If you guys are interested in more information on this inverter or this battery, I have some videos over on my new channel, Country View Solar, where I go in depth on the installation and testing of this inverter, also in depth on the battery as well. If you want to see more technical videos on this, head over to my other channel, Country View Solar. So I said at the beginning of the video, this was going to be a budget build. So for this inverter, conduit box, and the battery, this whole setup you see here, right now on Signature Solar's website, it's $47.96, so right at $4,800. So I still have 20 solar panels to go mount on the workshop roof, and that's going to be what permanently powers up this inverter. And then this installation will be complete. That probably won't happen for a few more weeks. I'm kind of waiting for the weather to cool down before I get up on the hot roof. So stick with us. By the time we get this all done and installed, we'll probably do an off-grid test, and we'll see how long we can actually last, or we'll find out how close we actually are to being off-grid. But we're getting closer. Every time we add something, we add a little bit more, we're getting closer. But I think that's going to be it for this video, guys. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.